Did you know the average senior has over 300,000 items in their home, and most professional organizers don't want you to know the secret to finally letting them go? Elaine, a 74-year-old retired teacher, had spent decades collecting memories, gifts, and just-in-case items, but she was trapped not just by clutter but by emotions, what turned it all around. 4 powerful mindset shifts that helped her reclaim her space, her peace, and her purpose without spending thousands on storage bins or consultants. Today, you'll discover those same 4 secrets and why professionals rarely talk about them publicly. What's one item you've been holding onto that no longer serves the life you want today? Let's begin with the first mindset shift that changed everything for Elaine. Elaine didn't wake up one morning and find her home filled with clutter. It happened slowly over years, one unopened box, one sentimental gift, one item she might need someday at a time. But the day she finally looked around and realized she couldn't walk from her kitchen to her front door without turning sideways, that was when something shifted inside her. The hallway, once filled with sunlight, had become a narrow path between piles of stacked magazines and donation bags that never made it out the door. The dining table was buried under photo albums, unopened mail, and a broken toaster she kept meaning to fix. The guest room hadn't had a guest in nearly a decade. She hadn't used it herself in years. It had turned into a catch-all space for anything she didn't know what to do with: boxes of her late husband's books, her daughter's old toys. A wedding dress from 1973, it wasn't just stuff, it was memory, it was guilt, it was grief that settled in the corners like dust. After her husband passed away, Elaine found herself clinging to the life they built together through the objects that had surrounded them. His coffee mug still sat on the counter, his tools remained untouched in the garage. Letting go of them felt like erasing him, and yet the clutter didn't comfort her, it haunted her. Every time she tripped over a box or avoided the spare room, she felt the weight of what she hadn't let herself feel: loss, loneliness, and the terrifying sense that time was moving forward without her. She had tried to fix it the way most of us do. She bought clear plastic bins, color-coded labels, storage shelves. She watched YouTube videos from chipper organizers who folded clothes into tiny rectangles and promised joy in every drawer. But nothing changed. She'd sort for an afternoon, then feel drained for a week. The bins just became containers for emotion, neatly sealed but never truly dealt with. She realized she didn't need more organizing tools, she needed something deeper, because the real trap wasn't in her hallway, it was in her heart. No one had ever asked her why she kept what she kept. No one told her that clutter isn't just a storage problem, it's often an emotional one. That revelation hit her the day she stood in her living room, surrounded by things she didn't love, didn't use, and didn't even want, but couldn't seem to release. It wasn't just the volume of stuff, it was the meaning it carried. That was when she stopped asking herself, "Where can I put this?" and started wondering, "Why am I still holding on?" This shift didn't happen overnight, but it started with one powerful idea. Maybe she didn't need to organize her past, maybe it was time to make space for her future. That moment, standing in a room filled with things she didn't love or use, became the crack that let in the light. Elaine didn't need more shelves, she needed a new question. And it came one morning during a quiet cup of coffee when a friend gently asked her, "What do you want your next 10 years to look like?" It landed differently. No one had asked her that before. She'd spent so long preserving the life she had, she'd forgotten she still had time to build something new. She took a notebook and wrote down what she hoped for. It wasn't complicated. She wanted to host Sunday dinners again, take up watercolor painting like she always meant to, and maybe, just maybe, adopt a little dog from the shelter down the road. As she wrote, something clicked. Her home didn't reflect any of that. The clutter around her had nothing to do with who she wanted to become. It was all about who she had been. That's when she realized, the right question is, should I keep this? It's, does this belong in the life I want now? That shift in perspective changed everything. She looked at her overflowing kitchen and saw not a place for cooking, but a museum of unused gadgets from a time she used to entertain big crowds. She didn't need 6 casserole dishes or the punch bowl that hadn't left the cabinet since 1998. What she did need was a cozy table for 4 and enough space in her pantry for the fresh ingredients she now enjoyed cooking with. In her bedroom closet, she found old office clothes, stiff jackets, conference badges, boxes of unused stationery from a teaching career she no longer missed. These weren't clothes for painting, walking the dog, or sitting on the porch with friends. They belonged to a woman who got up at 6 and graded papers until midnight. That chapter had ended, and with grace, she could now turn the page. One by one, Elaine began asking the next chapter question with every object. Does this support the life I want now, or is it just echoing the past? Her decisions became easier, not harder. She let go of the things that didn't fit the woman she was becoming. The act wasn't sad, it was freeing. Like making space for sunlight after drawing the curtains for too long. She kept the baking dishes she loved and gave away the ones that had always felt like clutter. She cleared out the guest room to turn it into an art studio, not a storage unit. And she even made room near the back door for a dog bed because that future felt real now. The mistake so many seniors make is holding on for the sake of memory, rather than making room for the version of themselves still waiting to be lived. Elaine didn't want to be the guardian of a life already lived, she wanted to be the author of a life still unfolding. If you're listening and wondering where to begin, try this. Take a quiet hour, sit with a pen and paper, and write your next chapter vision. Be honest, be bold, then walk through your home and ask, does this item belong in that chapter? Because once Elaine started living for who she was becoming, not who she had been, she found peace in letting go. But not everything was so easy. Some things still tugged at her heart, especially the ones tied to her family, her childhood, and the people she had loved and lost. But even with her new clarity about the future, Elaine still hesitated when it came to the boxes marked family memories. They sat stacked in the hallway closet, some untouched since the 80s. Old letters, school projects, handprints on faded construction paper, and her mother's china wrapped in yellowing newspaper. Each item seemed to whisper, "You can't let go of me, you'd be erasing someone." So she didn't. Until the day her youngest daughter, Laura, came by for lunch and Elaine decided to ask a question she'd never dared before. What would you actually want to keep when I'm gone? Laura looked startled at first, but then thoughtful. They walked together through the guest room, which had once been her childhood bedroom, and opened the boxes one by one. It didn't go as Elaine expected. The fancy china she had stored so carefully. Laura said gently, "It's beautiful, Mom, but we don't have room, and I've never actually used china." The 20 photo albums Elaine had curated with care. Laura only wanted one, the one with her and her sister in their Halloween costumes from 1992. "That one makes me smile," she said. The rest, she said kindly, could be scanned. Elaine felt a mix of relief and sadness. She had kept so much because she thought it mattered to them, but the truth was, she never asked. Most seniors don't. A 2022 survey showed that over 60% of adult children don't want the bulk of their parents' belongings. That fact hit Elaine hard, not because her things weren't wanted, but because she realized she'd been keeping them for the wrong reason: guilt. With her daughter's help, Elaine created 3 piles. The first, keep to use items that still added meaning or beauty to her life today. The second, digitize letters, drawings, photos that could be scanned and shared without taking up space. The third, release the rest with gratitude. She called it her true keepsakes test, and it changed the way she viewed her past. It wasn't about keeping everything. It was about honoring what mattered and letting the rest be enough. One quiet morning, she sat at the kitchen table and carefully chose a dozen handwritten recipe cards from the drawer that used to jam shut from overstuffing. She tied them with a ribbon and placed them in a wooden box. When Laura visited again, Elaine handed her the box and said, "These are the ones I know you'll actually use. The lasagna, the lemon pound cake, the one your dad loved." Laura smiled and held it to her chest. That moment, the warmth, the memory, the simplicity meant more than keeping the entire drawer. Turning memories into something living, something shareable, gave Elaine a freedom she hadn't felt in years. She began scanning old letters and recording voice memos telling the stories behind them. She emailed the digital album to her daughters with a simple note: "Don't save everything, just save the love." It wasn't easy, letting go never is. But what Elaine discovered was that releasing objects didn't erase the people or the moments. It made room to remember them more clearly without the burden of storage. Still, some things weren't so easy to digitize or divide. Some objects carried a weight not of history but of emotion, especially those tied to her husband, his tools, his books, his worn flannel shirts. But for Elaine, the hardest part wasn't the china or the photo albums, it was the closet in the back of the house. Inside, still hanging neatly after all these years, were her husband's flannel shirts. Some were soft from wear, others still faintly held the scent of his aftershave. She hadn't opened that door in months, maybe years. She wasn't wearing them. No one was, but each one seemed to carry a piece of him, and letting go felt like erasing their life together. One gray morning, she finally stood in front of that closet with a large donation bag in her hand. She took a deep breath and began pulling the shirts down one by one, folding them slowly. But as she reached for the red one, the one he always wore on Christmas, her hand froze. It felt heavier than the others. She opened it gently, and from the front pocket a small folded paper slipped out and fell to the floor. It was a handwritten note, his handwriting. "See you at the lake, bring your laugh," it said. A silly note he had tucked into her coat one fall decades ago. She sat down right there on the bedroom floor, tears blurring her eyes, clutching the shirt to her chest. In that moment, something shifted. She realized she didn't want to give these away, but she also didn't want them to remain ghosts in the dark. That's when the idea came to her, maybe she could turn them into something that stayed warm, close, and alive. So she did something different. One Saturday, she invited her daughters and grandchildren over. She laid the shirts out on the living room floor alongside a few of his tools and framed photos from their travels. Then, one by one, they sat together and talked. About the time he fixed the kitchen sink with duct tape and prayer, about his favorite fishing hat and how he always whistled when he was nervous. The room filled with laughter, then with quiet tears. It was the first time in years that they had shared his memory aloud, not just through old photos but through feeling. Elaine gave each family member the chance to choose one item that meant something personal. Her granddaughter took a well-worn red flannel shirt, the same one he always wore at Christmas. Her daughter chose his old compass from their road trip through Colorado. For the rest, Elaine took photos of the items laid out with care and printed them into a small book with handwritten notes beneath each one. Then she sent the shirts to a friend who made quilts. A few weeks later, she held in her hands a soft, warm quilt made from the fabric of his life. It didn't take up space in a forgotten closet. It now covered her on cold mornings while she read by the window. It made her feel close to him, not because she kept everything but because she kept what mattered. She also created a shadow box. Inside was his watch, a photo of them dancing in the kitchen, and a handwritten note he once left on her pillow. That one box said more than any pile of untouched belongings ever could. It told a story, it sparked conversation. And most of all, it brought comfort, not weight. This was what Elaine called her memory transfer ritual. It wasn't about tossing out the past, it was about transforming it, turning heavy objects into light, meaningful reminders. For years, she'd believed that letting go would mean forgetting, but this process helped her realize that the opposite was true. The clutter had actually buried the memories. Now they lived in her heart, in her quilt, in her granddaughter's smile when she wore that red shirt. She was no longer afraid to open that closet. In fact, there was nothing left in it but space and possibility. But even as her home felt lighter, one question remained. She had cleared the past, honored it, freed herself from its weight. Yet how could she make sure the clutter never returned? Still, clearing out the past was only half the story. Elaine quickly realized that if she wasn't careful, the clutter would find its way back in. Old habits slip in quietly, especially the habit of saying yes. A friend offers you a barely used chair they're getting rid of. A neighbor drops off a box of extras you might want. You're out shopping and spot something cute just in case. One decision at a time, the house starts to fill again. Elaine knew she needed something more than a tidy room. She needed a filter, a pause, a way to protect the space she'd worked so hard to reclaim. That's when she learned about what she called threshold mastery, the idea that your front door isn't just a welcome mat, it's a boundary. You don't have to let everything in, you can become the gatekeeper of your home. So she set up a simple ritual. Near the entrance, she placed a small wooden shelf. Nothing fancy, just a clean, open space. From that day on, anything new, an object, a gift, even a purchase, had to sit there for 48 hours before it could be put away. That was her pause zone. During those 2 days, she'd ask herself a few gentle but firm questions. The first, am I keeping this out of guilt? That came up often. She realized how many things she had said yes to just because she didn't want to hurt someone's feelings or seem wasteful. The second, does this reflect my life now or my life 10 years ago? That one hit even deeper. Elaine caught herself buying party platters for gatherings she no longer hosted, shoes she no longer wore, even books she no longer read. They belonged to a version of her that was kind and real but no longer current. Honoring her present meant choosing differently. Sometimes she said yes, often she said no, and every time she paused she felt stronger, not deprived. The 48-hour shelf helped her slow down and decide rather than react. It became a symbol of her freedom. She also made a rule: if something came in, something else had to go out, not as punishment but as balance. She shared this trick with her friends at church, and soon they started their own pause shelves. They began calling Elaine's front hallway the decision porch. It made her smile. Then one Sunday after service, her friend Jan took her aside and said, "You know, ever since I put up that little shelf by my door, I've been sleeping better. It's like my house finally feels quieter." Another woman chimed in, saying she used the same idea to avoid taking in things from her late aunt's estate that she knew would only weigh her down. Elaine didn't expect any of that. She just wanted to protect her peace. But somehow, her simple habit had started to ripple outward, changing other lives just as it had changed hers. Decluttering isn't just about the past, it's about protecting your future. And when Elaine changed the way she welcomed things in, she didn't just maintain her home, she changed her behavior. The endless flow of stuff finally stopped. Her home stayed open, light, calm, and so did she. But perhaps the biggest transformation of all wasn't in the boxes she let go of or the items she paused at the door. It was what those empty spaces allowed in return: light through the windows, laughter around the table, quiet mornings with tea. Her home had changed, and soon everyone around her noticed. And in time, everyone around Elaine began to see what she was feeling on the inside. The changes weren't loud or flashy, they were quiet, steady, and full of light. Her home, once weighed down by the past, now felt alive again. Sunlight reached corners it hadn't touched in years. The hallway, once a narrow passage through stacked boxes, had become a wide, open path she could walk safely, even barefoot. She no longer had to shuffle sideways to reach the kitchen. She walked tall. The dining room, long buried under piles of paperwork and forgotten mail, now held a polished table that could actually be used. She set it every Sunday just like she used to when her grandchildren came for dinner. The sound of their laughter echoed off the walls again, not muffled by clutter but bouncing free through space that welcomed them. She'd set out her mother's lace table runner, light a few candles, and serve pot roast with mashed potatoes. Simple, warm, real, it reminded her of the life she once lived, not because she was trying to get it back, but because now she could enjoy it again, fully present. But the biggest transformation happened in the spare room. It had been a storage pit for years: boxes, broken furniture, dusty frames that never made it onto walls. Now it was something else entirely: a watercolor studio. She placed her easel near the window where birds often landed on the fence outside. She'd sit with a warm cup of tea, a brush in her hand, and no pressure, just quiet, just color. That window used to be blocked by a broken lamp and old winter coats. Now it framed the sky. Elaine said something one afternoon that stayed with everyone who heard it. She said, "I don't just live here again, I breathe here again." And it was true. Her sleep improved. Her chest didn't feel tight anymore. Her thoughts were clearer, like her home had handed her back her peace of mind. No more waking up overwhelmed by the mess. No more walking through rooms she tried not to look at. Now she looked forward to mornings. She even found herself singing again, humming little tunes from her teaching days as she made coffee. Neighbors noticed. One friend said, "Elaine, you look 10 years younger." And it wasn't about appearance. It was the energy, the freedom, the lightness that comes when your surroundings match your soul, when every room tells the truth of who you are now, not who you were or who others expected you to be. Decluttering, it turns out, wasn't just about getting rid of things. It was about returning to herself, choosing what stayed, choosing what mattered, choosing to live fully, not surrounded but supported. Her home didn't just look different. It felt like a second chance. And yet, even with all the light, the space, and the peace Elaine had reclaimed, she couldn't help but think back on the road that brought her here. She remembered the years of frustration. The plastic bins that never got opened. The expensive organizing systems that looked great in catalogs but didn't change how she felt inside her own home. Most of all, she remembered the money, over $4,000 spent on consultations, tools, and tidy labels that promised clarity but delivered short-lived relief. Elaine didn't hold bitterness in her voice when she spoke of it, just clarity. They weren't trying to hurt me, she said. They were trying to help in the way they knew how, but now, looking back, she could see it clearly. The problem wasn't the organizers, the problem was the industry's focus. They offered storage. She needed surrender. They taught her how to fold. What she needed was permission to let go. The truth is, many professionals in the organizing world are trained to solve surface problems, what to do with stuff, where to put it, how to label it. But rarely do they ask, why are you keeping it in the first place? There's a reason for that. Their business depends in part on repeat clients. If you feel overwhelmed again in 6 months, they'll be there to help again, and there's no shame in that. It's just a system built to manage things, not transform lives. Elaine said something simple but powerful one afternoon while folding laundry. Once I changed my mind, I changed my space. That was it. No container, no calendar, no checklist had ever done what one shift in thinking did for her. She didn't just declutter her home, she reclaimed her story. That's why these mindset shifts matter, because no one can do them for you. They don't require money, they don't require fancy storage. They require courage, honesty, and sometimes a quiet question whispered in your hallway, does this still belong in my life? You don't need another trip to the organizing store. You need a pen, a notebook, and a willingness to ask better questions. Questions like, is this helping me move forward? Or would I buy this again today? Or even, what is this costing me in peace, space, or energy? Elaine now shares those questions with her friends, not because she wants to be anyone's guru, but because she knows how lonely it feels to be buried under things you once loved but no longer need. She knows how heavy it is to hold on to a life that no longer fits. She keeps a note on her refrigerator now, just a small one taped next to her grocery list. It reads, choose what supports your next chapter. That single sentence has guided every new decision, and it hasn't just kept the clutter away, it's made every part of her life lighter. Because in the end, what professional organizers rarely teach is this. Clarity doesn't come from containers, it comes from asking the right questions. And when you do, your home starts to answer back with space, with stillness, and with joy. Elaine's story isn't just a story. It's a mirror, a gentle invitation to ask yourself, what would it feel like to come home again and actually feel free, not just tidy, not just clean, but light, open, at peace. Maybe you're sitting in a room right now that once had a purpose but is now full of things you rarely touch. Maybe your dining table hasn't seen a meal in months, or your hallway feels just a little too tight. The question isn't where to start, it's who you want to become next. If you could give your future self a gift, not something wrapped in ribbon, but something lasting, what would it be? A bedroom that breathes. A living room that welcomes conversation, not silent stacks of stuff. A hallway you can walk through barefoot, unburdened. The answer might begin with one decision. One corner, one small shift in thinking. Don't try to do everything. Do one thing deeply, let it come from clarity, not pressure. Let it be a quiet yes to your next chapter, not a frantic no to the past. You're not alone in this. There's a whole community of us, people who are ready to reset, not just organize. In the comments, we'd love to hear from you. What's one item you chose to release this week and why? What memory are you choosing to carry forward in a lighter, more beautiful way? You never know who you might inspire by telling your story. Elaine's began with a hallway. Yours might begin with a drawer or a shelf. Or a quiet decision whispered to yourself one morning before coffee. Remember, this isn't just about letting go, it's about choosing what to carry forward with care, with purpose, with love. The gift isn't the space itself, it's the peace it brings. And peace is something you can give yourself at any age. In our next episode, we'll explore a different kind of clutter, the digital kind. Old emails, emotional messages, photos you've kept but never looked at. Because decluttering isn't only about our homes, it's about clearing space everywhere we live on our screens, in our minds, and in our hearts. But for now, take a breath, take a moment. And take one small, loving step toward a lighter life. And as Elaine took that small, loving step, she didn't just change her home, she changed her life. What began as a woman feeling overwhelmed and unsure became something beautiful. A 74-year-old widow who found not only space but strength, a woman who traded silent hallways for laughter around the table, who turned a forgotten closet into a quilt of memories, who let go of what no longer served her and in doing so made room for who she was becoming. Her house looks different now, yes, but more importantly, it feels different. It holds warmth, not weight. It reflects peace, not pressure. It welcomes the life she wants to live now, not the one that already passed. And that's the real transformation, because decluttering isn't about getting rid of stuff, it's about healing. It's about honoring where you've been and choosing with open hands where you'll go next. The 4 shifts Elaine discovered aren't trendy tricks or quick fix hacks. They're quiet gifts, gifts of clarity, courage, and connection. They don't come from storage catalogs or fancy apps. They come from asking the right questions and having the heart to answer them honestly. So if this story spoke to you, even just a little, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who may need to hear it. And in the comments below, we'd love to know what's one item you've decided to release this week and why. Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs to begin. Because here's the truth, you don't have to carry everything. Just what matters.